Happy Wednesday. Welcome in. If you are new here, this is the podcast Pocket Full of Sunshine. My name is Nina. I am the host of this podcast, and I started it almost a year ago in honor of my daughter, Hayden. Her life was taken at the young age of 18. And so I started this podcast as a forum or a platform, so to speak, just to give moms like me a place to feel safe and for their grief to feel valid. And for girls like Hayden, moms with girls like Hayden who have learned these behavior patterns through ourselves, not putting blame on any mother at all by any means, but just to kind of bring to light, like, learned behavior is hard. It's so hard to break. And growing up, I've told you guys a million times, I grew up in a DV home. And I always said, like, I'm never going to put myself in that situation, never going to put my kids through that. I didn't realize how hard it was to get out of a DV relationship until I found myself in one myself with then 2 small kids. And no way it seemed like there was no way out of it, right? The only way I was going to get out of that relationship was in a grave. And thankfully that was not the case. And here I am today to share my story and tell my story. However, Hayden was not so lucky. She ended up in a DV relationship herself. And as a result of that, she lost her life. She didn't get out of it soon enough. So it's just a lot of things like that I felt a lot of guilt at first. Just because, I would say all the time, like, why did it have to be Hayden to lose her life? It was supposed to be me that ended this cycle for our family. It was supposed to be me that broke those chains, those generational curses. I left the DV relationships that I was in. So to me, like, I broke that curse, right? And then when my daughter found herself in the same situation and wasn't lucky enough to get out of it, I started thinking, like, my little kids would say stuff like, I'm never gonna take my girlfriend's life. I have to be careful now what I say on here because TikTok flagged me last time. But I'm never going to take my girlfriend's life, or if my boyfriend ever hurts me, I'm never going to be his girlfriend again, and things like that. And then it got me really thinking that Hayden's the one that broke that cycle for us, for our family. Like, my little kids now, my adult kids, my teenager, they are never going to settle for anything that they don't deserve in a relationship. And I'm so thankful for that. But at the same time, I'm so freaking mad that it had to be my daughter that broke that curse, because I was that person in my mind, but God had other plans. He sent Hayden here, obviously, to break this cycle and this curse for our family. And I've heard people say too, like, we'll never understand why God does the things that he does. But I said this in a couple episodes ago, like, God didn't kill my daughter. He wasn't driving the car. He's not responsible for this, but he is responsible for this podcast, for this platform, for this community of people that have come together to love and support each other through all the grief, all the trauma, all the addiction, everything that we're struggling with in our life. I just told one of my dearest friends this morning, yesterday morning, that the devil comes after us through our kids, because from a mother's standpoint, that's the only way. That is the only way. That's the only way that you can affect us, is through our children. And so our children are under attack. And I believe that with my whole heart. Like, the evil that took my daughter from me was designed to not only take her life, but to take my life, to take my family, to tear us all to shreds, and for the enemy to win. And that's not what's happening here. Has some of our family, well, not our family directly, but my daughter's family fallen apart from this? Absolutely. Because they didn't have the faith and the courage and the relationship with God that we had, that we have, to be able to say, yes, this horrible thing happened to us. No, our life is never going to be the same. We'll never have the same life that we've known. But now we have to turn this into something good, right? We've got to use this to help people so that nobody else loses their life like she did. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm on this podcast. And that's why I share my real, raw truth with you guys all the time. And sometimes it's not comfortable, because admitting that we have played a part in something, or that we've done something that wasn't necessarily righteous or, by the book, then it's hard for us to admit that. And it's even harder for us to forgive ourselves for the things that we have said, the things that we have done, the things that we could have done better. Because then that's one of my biggest struggles, is always like, I should have been a better mom. I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. But I did the best with what I could. I was so unhealed and living every day stuck in my trauma that I hadn't dealt with from childhood, from teenage years, from domestic violence relationships, from all the things that I had been through in my life. And I let that show too much to my kids, to my older two anyway. And so they learned some of those behaviors. And one thing I've learned is that from our parents, we learn from their behavior, or we learn their behavior, right? And sometimes we do both. I myself have done both. I've learned lots of things from my parents that I've said, I am never doing that ever in my entire life, and I've stuck to it, right? And I have done things completely different, like total 180 from how they did things. And then there's things that I've learned from them that I have repeated, right? Like the domestic violence, like being in DV relationships, for the longest time, alcoholism, addiction, things like that. So I went away from a lot of the patterns, but also I didn't realize that I was following a lot of the patterns. And I didn't realize this until Hayden was taken from us. And I sat back and I started looking at my whole life differently. Like, I have learned so much from Hayden since she's been gone. And I know that sounds crazy. And I know, like, how can somebody that's passed away teach you stuff? But I know some of you understand what I'm talking about right now, because when my dad passed away, and even the last couple of months that he was alive, I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about his past trauma. He would talk about things about, how he had lost people and things that he had been through as a teenager, as a kid, as a child, all this stuff. And I never knew it until he got dementia, and then really started talking about it, crying about it, opening up about it, because my dad was always one that would hold in all of his crap until he was drunk, and then he would pour it all out on my sister and I as little small kids, and we really didn't understand it. But as an adult, I wasn't in fear mode when he was talking about this type of stuff. I was really listening, and I'm like, damn, this man has really been through it. Like, he had to identify his brother when his brother was taken from a car crash at a very young age. He lost his father. He lost a nephew. He lost friends in Vietnam. He had brothers that were in the war and were injured and things. He had a family dynamic that was full of chaos and anger and resentment and fighting. So he never learned proper love. He never learned how to love properly or healthy. And he had this fear, deep, deep fear of abandonment because of his childhood from losing so many people so young, right? And so I learned then from him, sometimes I got to the point with him where I would block his number and I wouldn't answer the phone because he would call, he would cuss me out, he would just, go be saying off the wall stuff from the dementia and things. And it was frustrating. It was so frustrating. So I block his number. And then one day I really started thinking about it, and I'm like, he's sitting there worrying himself to death if he doesn't know why I'm not answering the phone. Someone one time had prank called my dad, or prank text him. And it was a teenage girl, and she told him that she was Kylie, my daughter, and that I had passed away. This was long before Hayden even, passed away, anything. And my dad lost it. I'm surprised he didn't have a heart attack that day. He called my sister. He called my mom. He called my husband. I was married at the time. He called everybody because he was in this frantic panic that I had passed away. And I was working in a secure facility then, so I didn't have access to my phone that day, so I couldn't answer the phone calls. They were all trying to call me. Nobody could reach me. So they're all thinking that I had passed away. And I realized in that moment when I finally unblocked his number and he called and was crying and he said, I've been trying to reach you for an hour. He was cussing, like, you haven't answered the GD phone, like all this stuff. I thought you were dead and all this and that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, really? I didn't answer the phone because you're getting on my nerves. But then I was like, oh shit, like somebody told him one time that I had passed away and he freaked out. So what did I just do to him? Like, I reopened all that trauma for him on purpose. Like, I did that intentionally. So I didn't block his number anymore. I just dealt with the calls. I dealt with the cussing, the whatever. 15,000 trips to the store, going over to his apartment at 3 a.m. to fix his TV because he turned it on the wrong button and couldn't figure out how to get it back on. Or he would lose the remote. I'd have to go find it. Like, it was crazy and it was chaotic and it was stressful. And I learned so much through that experience. At the end, like, I'm glad I was able to, like, help him the best that I could. We did end up having to put him in a facility the last few weeks of his life just because the infection was getting so bad and the dementia was getting so bad. And I couldn't be there with him 24/7, neither could my sister. So we were like, our hands were kind of tied at that point. The state was stepping in because he was calling 911 every few minutes and going to the hospital, and then he'd forget he called them and then he'd go crazy. Dementia is a horrible, horrible thing. It's really sad to watch somebody go through that. Just the changes and the confusion in their eyes. I think that was the worst part for me. Like, my dad always knew what he was talking about. He always, like, he could remember things from years and years and years ago, right? And when he had dementia, he couldn't remember something from 5 minutes ago. And he would repeat the same things and repeat and repeat. And then he would get this, like, such confused look on his face. Or, like, when he forgot my birthday. He forgot my birthday one year, and when he realized, like, when I finally told him, like, you've been putting me through hell all day and it's my birthday. Like, what is wrong with you? And he was like, I don't know. Like, he cried and cried. He was so sorry that he forgot my birthday. He apologized and apologized and apologized. But it was just, through that experience, I learned how to be patient, more patient, because I was not. I was very impatient, and like if I tell you something once, I expect you to hear it, listen, understand, and like not do it again, right? I was like that with my dad. I was like that with my kids. Like, I'm going to speak once, that's all. But sometimes we just have to do more than that. We have to try to understand from somebody else's perspective. And that doesn't mean that we let them abuse us or we let them, treat us some type of way. People treat us how we allow them to treat us. But there are some circumstances where we will have to repeat ourselves and try to understand why this person can't provide what we need them to. Does that mean we have to stick around and deal with it? Absolutely not. Especially in relationships. Because if you have told someone your boundaries, if you've set boundaries with someone and they continue to cross those boundaries, they just don't care. Or they're dealing with some trauma or they have some trauma that they haven't dealt with, and that's causing them to be unable to respect your boundaries. And again, that's not your problem. That's not your healing to do. You have your own shit to heal from. They need to deal with theirs. So walk away from it. I wish I would have done that sooner in so many different situations. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry. I'm still super tired from that whole fiasco with my blood pressure and surgery, post-op, all that stuff. My biopsies came back great, though, which is good. Everything was benign. So that's I'm so thankful for that. But I'm just still super tired and my blood pressure is still not great. I mean, it's going up, but it's taking me a little bit just to get back to where I was. Y'all can tell I have more energy this week than I did last week. Last week, I was literally the walking dead. It was so bad. But back to what I was talking about, learning from our parents or learning from their behavior or learning their behavior, right? And so with Hayden learned a lot of my behavior, okay? When I was with their dad, she was very small, so she doesn't remember much of it, but I was constantly, even when I was pregnant with her, I go back to when I was pregnant with her, like our babies can feel things, right? Like when we're pregnant, they know, they feel everything we feel. So she felt all the pain that I felt. She cried, like when I was crying hysterically almost every single day, she knew that, she felt that. When she was born, she was a crier. She cried all the time. She always suffered from anxiety, depression, things like that. And I feel like that's because during my pregnancy, I was in a constant state of anxiety and depression, right? So did that affect her while she was in vitro or in utero? I don't know. But to me, that makes sense because that's where it started with her. And then when she was born, of course, I was not a single mom, but essentially a single mom because everything I did, it was all me. It was just me with 2 kids. And that was exhausting and frustrating. And sometimes I would just be sitting there rocking her in a rocking chair. She would be crying, I would be crying, and we'd just be rocking. We'd just be rocking and crying. That's it. Because I had no help. It was so bad. And so my life as a young mom, as a teen mom with them was a super, super hard struggle. And for years I didn't work because it was not worth being accused and all of this and that. So I stayed home with the kids. And then finally I did get a job and go back to work because I knew I had to get out of that situation or I wasn't going to make it out alive. And then Hayden really, I feel like, suffered from a lot of separation anxiety. And as she got older, that got worse because her dad wasn't really in the picture. He wasn't involved except for, every now and then. There were protective orders in place for years, and it was not a good situation. He would come around when he got a girlfriend and disappear when he didn't. It was more of like a show dad type of deal. So holidays, stuff like that. So she had a lot of separation anxiety, a lot of resentment. And then she blamed me a lot for that, because when she was there, that's what she was told, like every time the state would put him in jail for child support, things like that. It was always, your mom put me in jail and this and that. And that wasn't the case. Like, pay your child support, you won't go to jail, period. So she ended up having a lot of resentment towards me. And I did the same thing with my mom, because my dad was put in jail several times when I was growing up for not paying child support, things like that. And I was always like, you put our dad in jail. No, she didn't. And Mom, I'm sorry. If you're listening, I'm sorry for that, because I was a shithead teenager and I blamed you for a lot of stuff that never, ever, ever was your fault. And I'm sorry if I made you feel like it was your fault. And I'm sorry if I ever, I know it hurt your feelings, but I'm sure it pissed you off more than it hurt your feelings, or maybe both. And I'm sorry for that, because now I understand. And I was wrong for that, because there are consequences to our actions, always, no matter what. And so Hayden and I spent a lot of time arguing over her dad and why he was in jail. And I look back and I'm like, why? Why did I waste time with that? But I wasn't healed then. I didn't know then really how to properly communicate with my kids, because there was never proper communication with my parents, right? So I didn't know how to properly communicate with my children. Now I'm getting much better at it, but some days are still a struggle. Some days are really still a struggle. But I really keep in mind now all of the things that I went through with Hayden, and everything that I've learned from that and learned from her. And everything that now that she's gone, I'm like, gosh, I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. I wish I would have done this more or that more. So now I do that with my other kids, because this is my cycle to break, right? The domestic violence was Hayden's cycle in our family to break. The cycle in my family, for me, for my kids, now that I need to break, is healthy relationships with the parents and the children. I'm getting ready to have a grandson, right? I don't ever want my daughter to feel like her child is not safe with me, or she's not safe with me, or, I'm not capable of having a healthy relationship with her son, because I just don't ever want her to feel that way. So I'm still working on myself every single day. And I've told you guys before, I don't think anybody's ever completely healed, but I do think that there's never enough to learn. Every single day we can learn something else, whether it's something like for work, whether it's something, a new recipe, or a behavior, or how to break one. So have peers, have mentors, have friends, people that you can look up to and respect, and people that are going to encourage you to do better, not people that are going to enable you to stay in the same place that you're at, the same place that you've been at for the last how many years. If your tribe, if your circle, if your community, if you're whatever you're calling them, if those people aren't loving you and supporting you, even through your grief and your trauma, saying like, okay, you're going to sit in it, you're going to deal with it, you're going to get through it, and then you're going to grab my hand and you're going to get up, and we're going to walk away from it. We're going to walk out of it. Not saying it's still not going to be there, right? Every time we look in that rear view, there it is. But then we're going to look ahead and see where we're going, because we're not staying stuck there in that grief, in that trauma, in that addiction, in that past, in those wounds, those deep, deep wounds from these relationships that we've had, we're not staying there. We're going to think about what happened. We're going to find the lesson in it. And then we're going to be the blessing in it. I always say there's a blessing in the lesson. But recently I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, you're the blessing in the lesson. Because you're moving forward. You're doing better. You are sharing your story, your trauma. You're helping people and blessing them with the tools that you wish you would have had sooner. So be that blessing in that lesson for every single person that you come in contact with. And just be encouraging and understanding, but also hold tight to your boundaries, because there are people out there that will just attach to you and try to suck you dry for everything you have, for your love, for your money, for your energy, just for everything. But you'll know those people. You'll know who those people are, because the more you try to encourage them to do better and to be better, the more they'll draw back and stay stuck in the same spot that they are. They're going to keep repeating those same patterns, and they're not going to show any effort to break away from them. Right? I hope that makes sense to you guys. But anyway, that's just what I've been thinking about this week. Like all the things I've learned from people that I've lost in this lifetime. And we often only think about the things we learn from the people that are still here with us. But there's so much to learn from those who've passed away. So if you're dealing with grief this week, I want you to sit back and I want you to think about, what are some things that when you think of that person that passed away, what are some things that you say, man, I wish I would have said this more. Or I wish I would have done this more. Or I wish I would have done this better. Wish I would have done this differently. Who is that person for you? And what are those things that you wish you should have done better? You wish you could have done better. You wish you wish you could have done differently. Write them down and then do them. Do them differently now, because just because that person's not here doesn't mean you can't learn from them and continue to grow through them, through the lessons that you've learned from their life and your relationship that you had while they were here. And maybe that's all part of it, right? That's part of our healing. That's part of our growing. Like, especially when we're trying our best, we're trying to do better, we're still feeling stuck. We know there's something more that we need to do. Maybe it's digging into that grief and sitting with it and learning from these people that we've lost that have left these deep, deep, empty wounds in our hearts and our souls. Because for me, that has been so healing. Like learning these things from Hayden, because I know that's what she would have wanted. That's what she wanted from me. And now she's watching me give that to her siblings. So it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun. But I promise you it's going to feel a lot better in the end. So I love you guys, and I hope you tune in with me next week. If you ever want to be a guest on my show, we can talk about any topic. Like, this is an open platform. It doesn't matter. If there's anything you want to talk about on here, hit me up. You can email me, podcastpocketfulofsunshine@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram page. Across all platforms, I'm Podcast Pocketful of Sunshine. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, all the things. So let's talk about it. Somebody come talk with me. I don't mind doing these solo episodes, but I love having guests on because you guys are empowering. You really are. And it has to be on your time. It has to be when you're ready. But I am here for you to share your story, to be that safe place, You know, we can do it off camera, just have voice, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can even email me and write your story out to me in third person and I'll read it. No names, no nothing, because even that is healing for people. I've had anonymous listeners write in, email me their stories, and I've read them, and they have gotten such great feedback from their anonymous entries. So whatever works for you. But getting it off your chest definitely helps. And then listening to your episode is so healing and so encouraging, because you have your voice now and you're helping people. And now now you are that blessing in that lesson of yours. So keep being great. Email me, write me, all the things. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye.